Who were the Vikings? A question that excites history enthusiasts and casual learners alike. The Vikings, a name that stirs up images of fierce warriors, longships, and intricate mythology. But who were these intriguing people, really? The Vikings were seafaring Scandinavians hailing from what we now know as Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Their story begins in a time known as the Viking Age, which spanned from the late 8th century to the early 11th century. This was a time of exploration, expansion, and yes, a bit of pillaging. The term Viking itself is believed to derive from an Old Norse word, Vikinga, which means pirate or raider. Quite fitting, wouldn't you say? During the Viking Age, these Norse seafarers set sail from their Scandinavian homelands in search of new lands, opportunities, and of course, wealth. Their longships, with their iconic dragon-headed prows, cut through the waves of the North Atlantic, reaching as far as North America to the west, Russia to the east, and the Mediterranean to the south. But the Vikings were not just raiders and explorers. They were also traders, farmers, and skilled craftsmen, producing beautifully crafted objects and structures that have stood the test of time. They were also poets and storytellers, with a rich oral tradition that has given us epic sagas and a pantheon of gods and heroes that continue to captivate us today. It's also important to mention that the Vikings were not a unified group, but rather a collection of different tribes and clans, each with their own customs, beliefs, and ways of life. This diversity is reflected in their archaeological remains and written records, providing us with a multifaceted picture of Viking society. So, the Vikings were seafaring Scandinavians who lived during the Viking Age. But what made them so notorious? Well, that's a tale full of adventure, conquest, and a dash of ruthlessness. But we'll save that for the next chapter of our journey into the world of the Vikings. Vikings were not just known for their Scandinavian origins, but also for their infamous raids. The Viking Raids were a series of seaborne attacks that shocked the world, starting from their first recorded raid on Lindisfarne, a quiet and peaceful island off the coast of England, in the year 793. These fierce warriors from the north descended upon the unsuspecting monks, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. But what drove the Vikings to raid? The motivations were manifold. Primarily, the Vikings were after wealth and resources. The monasteries they targeted were often rich with treasures, filled with gold and silver religious artifacts that were easy pickings for the raiders. The Vikings also sought captives, who could be sold as slaves or held for ransom. The Viking raids were not random acts of violence, but strategic maneuvers which were made possible by the Vikings' superior shipbuilding and navigational skills. Their long ships, sleek and swift, were perfectly suited for quick strike and retreat tactics. These ships were shallow-drafted, which allowed them to sail up rivers and land directly on beaches. Their navigational abilities were equally impressive. The Vikings made use of primitive yet effective navigational tools, such as the sun compass and the sunstone. They also relied on their intimate knowledge of the stars, bird migration patterns, and other natural phenomena to find their way across the open sea. These raids continued for several centuries, spreading fear and chaos across Europe. The Vikings penetrated as far as the Mediterranean and even North America. Their fearsome reputation preceded them, and the mere sight of a Viking longship on the horizon was enough to strike terror into the hearts of their victims. But the Viking raids were not just about destruction. They also brought wealth and power to the Vikings. The plundered riches fueled the growth of their settlements back home, while the captured slaves provided much-needed labor. The Viking raids brought terror to many, but they also brought the Vikings wealth and power. Beyond raiding, the Vikings were also explorers, reaching lands far from their Scandinavian home. Their adventurous spirit and advanced seafaring skills led them to explore and settle in distant lands. The Vikings started their voyages close to home, first reaching the British Isles. Their long ships, uniquely designed with shallow drafts, allowed them to sail up rivers and swiftly land on shores, a tactic that served them well in their raids. Yet, their curiosity did not stop at the British Isles. The Vikings ventured further into the Atlantic, reaching the Faroe Islands, a group of 18 volcanic islands nestled between Iceland and Norway. The isolation of these islands made them an ideal base for further explorations. From the Faroe Islands, the Vikings set their sights on Iceland, a land of fire and ice. The country's harsh and unpredictable landscape did not deter these explorers, but instead they thrived, establishing a self-sustaining community that would last for centuries. Pushing the boundaries of exploration, the Vikings then journeyed to Greenland. This vast, icy land was far from hospitable, but the Vikings adapted, hunting seals and whales to survive. It was in Greenland that Eric the Red established the first Norse settlements. Remarkably, the Vikings didn't stop at Greenland. They ventured even further west, reaching the shores of North America, becoming the first known Europeans to set foot on this continent, beating Christopher Columbus by almost 500 years. The Viking explorer, Leif Erikson, is credited with this incredible achievement. These voyages were not without challenges. The Vikings faced treacherous seas, unpredictable weather, and unknown territories. But their determination, courage, and adaptability enabled them to explore lands far beyond their Scandinavian home, making them some of the most successful explorers of their time. These voyages not only expanded the Vikings' horizons, but also impacted the cultures and histories of the lands they reached. The Vikings were more than raiders and explorers. They had a rich culture and a complex society. At the heart of Viking society was a well-defined social structure. The society was broadly divided into three classes: the nobles or jarls, who were the ruling class, the freemen or carls, the majority of the population, and the thralls, the slaves. The jarls and carls were free and had rights to own land, while the thralls were the property of their owners. This system, while strict, allowed for upward mobility, and a thrall could potentially gain freedom and even rise to the rank of carl or jarl. Religion played a pivotal role in Viking life. Their pantheon was filled with a variety of gods and goddesses, each representing different aspects of life and nature. From Odin, the all-father god of wisdom and war, to Thor, the hammer-wielding god of thunder, these deities played a significant part in their daily lives, offering protection, granting favors, and demanding loyalty and sacrifices. Viking mythology was intrinsically woven into their culture, with stories of gods, giants, and heroes passed down through generations. These stories, known as sagas, were narrated in verse and are an invaluable source of information about Viking beliefs, values, and their perception of the world. The Vikings also had a unique system of writing known as runes. These were not merely letters, but symbols imbued with magical and spiritual significance. Runes were used for a variety of purposes, from everyday communication to divination and magic. They were carved on stones, bones, and pieces of wood, leaving us a rich tapestry of stories, prayers, and everyday life insights. Art was another integral part of Viking culture, with intricate designs adorning everything from their ships to their jewelry. Their art, often symbolic, depicted scenes from their mythology, their gods and their sagas, reflecting their deep spiritual beliefs and their view of the world. Viking society was complex and vibrant, with a deep spiritual and cultural life. All good things must come to an end, and so it was with the Viking Age. A myriad of factors led to the curtain call of this riveting period in history. The Viking Age, which had been characterized by relentless raids, exploration, and a unique culture, started to see its demise around the turn of the first millennium. One of the key factors that precipitated the end of the Viking Age was the adoption of Christianity. The Vikings, initially known for their pagan beliefs, gradually embraced Christianity. This religious shift brought about a change in their worldview and societal norms. Raids were no longer seen as an honorable pursuit, and the once feared seafarers started to settle down, trading their longships for plows. Another crucial factor was the establishment of centralized kingdoms in Scandinavia. Kingdoms like Denmark, Norway, and Sweden started to consolidate their power, leading to a more structured and less volatile society. The once fragmented and fiercely independent Viking clans found themselves under the rule of powerful monarchs, marking a significant shift in their social and political structures. A key event that symbolizes the end of the Viking Age is the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. In this battle, the English king Harold Godwinson defeated the Norwegian king Harald Hardrada, marking the end of Viking invasions in England. This event, coupled with the subsequent Norman conquest, marked a drastic shift in power dynamics and signaled the end of the Viking dominance. However, it's important to note that while the Viking Age came to an end, the influence of the Vikings did not. Their legacy lived on, not just in the Scandinavian countries, but across the world. Their contributions to exploration, trade, warfare, and culture are still evident today, reminding us of the indelible mark they left on history. The Viking Age may have ended, but the influence of the Vikings did not. The Viking Age may be over, but the legacy of the Vikings is still with us today. The Vikings, known for their seafaring adventures and rich culture, left an indelible mark on the world that continues to shape our present. One of the most prominent areas of their influence is the English language. Words like sky, egg, window, and even they, their, and them are all borrowed from Old Norse, the language of the Vikings. This linguistic impact is a testament to the extensive interaction between the Vikings and the English-speaking world. But the Viking legacy goes beyond language. The Vikings' reputation as seafarers and explorers has influenced countless works of fiction, from novels to films and even video games. Their myths and legends have become a rich source of inspiration for writers and artists, giving birth to epic tales of gods, heroes, and monsters. The image of the fearsome Viking warrior armed with a helmet and axe has become a staple in popular culture, symbolizing strength and courage. Yet the influence of the Vikings is not confined to the realms of language and pop culture. Their legacy also extends to the field of history and archaeology. Viking artifacts, from weapons and jewelry to boats and burial sites, provide invaluable insights into their way of life. These archaeological findings continue to fuel our curiosity and deepen our understanding of this fascinating civilization. The Vikings also left a lasting impact on the landscapes they inhabited. From the coasts of Scotland to the shores of Newfoundland, their settlements, fortifications, and landmarks serve as reminders of their presence and prowess. The study of the Vikings, therefore, is not just about uncovering the past. It's about understanding how their legacy continues to shape our present and potentially our future. The Viking Age may have ended over 1,000 years ago, but the echoes of their influence can still be heard today. From their seafaring adventures to their rich culture, the Vikings have left an indelible mark on our world. So, who were the Vikings? To encapsulate, they were a group of seafaring Scandinavians who emerged during the late 8th century. Known for their fearsome raids, they were not just marauders, but also skilled explorers. They voyaged as far as North America, centuries before Columbus, and established settlements across Europe and Asia. The Vikings were not merely warriors. Their society was complex and sophisticated, boasting a rich tapestry of culture, law, and commerce. Their unique mythology, art, and language have left an indelible mark on our cultural landscape. The Viking Age, however, was not to last forever. It gradually faded by the late 11th century, but not without leaving a significant legacy. Their impact on the world through exploration, trade, and conquest continues to echo through the ages. The Vikings were seafaring Scandinavians who made a significant impact on the world during the Viking Age. Their story continues to intrigue us centuries later.